The rain drummed against the windows of the Moonlight Diner at 12:45 in the morning. William Carter, 36 years old and bone-tired from his second job of the day, sat hunched over a cup of black coffee. The former Marine Scout leader just wanted 15 minutes of peace before his overnight security shift. That peace shattered when Clinton Moore, dressed in a $3,000 suit, grabbed the young waitress by the wrist. Her eyes went wide with panic. Other customers looked away. William stood up, his voice low and steady. That's enough. He had no idea the woman he was about to defend wasn't just any waitress. She was Seraphina Dawson, daughter of billionaire tech mogul Archibald Dawson. The neon lights cast pale blue shadows across the chrome tables as William Carter nursed his coffee, trying to stretch the $1.50 drink into a full break. His right shoulder ached, the old injury from Kandahar acting up in the damp weather. 3 jobs barely kept the rent paid on the small apartment he shared with his 7-year-old daughter, Bridget. Night security at the warehouse district, morning delivery runs for a medical supply company, and weekend handyman work when he could find it. The math was simple and unforgiving. $1,200 for rent, $300 for utilities, $400 for Bridget's dance classes and school supplies. Another $600 for food and everything else. $2,500 a month, just to stay afloat in a city that seemed designed to drown working people. He'd chosen this diner because it was halfway between his delivery route and the warehouse. The coffee was terrible but cheap, and the night shift waitress, a young woman with blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, never rushed him to leave. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling cups and clearing plates with the kind of grace that came from years of service work. Something about her seemed different, though. The way she held herself, the precision of her speech when she thanked customers. William had noticed it before, during his late-night stops, but he'd learned long ago not to pry into other people's stories. Seraphina Dawson had been working at the Moonlight Diner for 3 months, and she'd never felt more alive. The irony wasn't lost on her that she found more truth in serving coffee to truckers and night shift workers than she'd ever found in her father's boardrooms. 26 years old, with a master's degree in product design from Stanford, she could have been running a division at Dawson Tech. Instead, she wore a name tag that said Sarah and learned what real exhaustion felt like when your feet ached after an 8-hour shift. Her father thought she was having some kind of breakdown. Her therapist called it seeking authentic experience. Seraphina just knew she needed to understand what life was like for the 99% of people who would never see the inside of a private jet. The bell above the door chimed at 12:43, and Clinton Moore entered with 2 associates. The smell of expensive cologne cut through the diner's atmosphere of coffee and grease. Clinton had made his fortune in venture capital, the kind of man who treated money like a game and people like game pieces. At 40 years old, he'd cultivated connections throughout the tech world, including several deals with Dawson Tech. He knew exactly who Seraphina was, had known from the moment she'd started this little experiment of hers. The information had been useful, filed away for the right moment. Tonight, with the quarterly data cloud infrastructure deal hanging in negotiations, seemed like the perfect time to apply some pressure. Well, well. Clinton's voice carried across the diner as he slid into a booth, his associates flanking him. If it isn't the princess playing dress-up, he snapped his fingers at Seraphina. Coffee. Black. And make it actually drinkable, this time. Seraphina approached the table with her order pad, maintaining the same professional demeanor she showed every customer. Good evening, gentlemen. I'll get that coffee right away. Would you like to see menus? What I'd like, Clinton said, reaching out to grab her wrist as she turned, is for you to stop this charade. How long are you going to keep pretending to be poor, sweetheart? The other customers in the diner seemed to shrink into themselves. A trucker in the corner booth suddenly found his newspaper fascinating. An elderly couple near the window began gathering their things to leave. The cook in the kitchen turned up the radio. This was how it always worked. Money talks, everyone else walks away. William watched Clinton's fingers dig into Seraphina's wrist, saw the flash of fear in her eyes that she tried to hide behind professionalism. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in villages halfway around the world, in places where power took what it wanted because no one could stop it. His coffee cup clinked against the saucer as he set it down. The Marine in him did a quick tactical assessment. 3 men. Clinton was soft, probably hadn't thrown a real punch in his life. The two associates were bigger, but they had the look of men who relied on intimidation rather than actual violence. The one on the left kept touching his jacket pocket. Probably had a phone there, ready to call lawyers, or police, or both. The one on the right was younger, nervous, kept glancing at the door. Neither was a real threat. "Sir, please let go," Seraphina said, her voice steady but strained. "This is inappropriate," Clinton laughed, pulling her closer. "Inappropriate? Honey, your whole act here is inappropriate. Does Daddy know his little girl is slumming it with the commoners? Or is this some kind of rebellion phase?" William stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate. The way he used to move when approaching a checkpoint. Non-threatening, but impossible to ignore. His boots made soft sounds on the linoleum as he crossed the 3 yards between his table and Clinton's booth. "I think the lady asked you to let go," William said. His voice was calm, conversational even, but there was something underneath it that made Clinton's associates shift in their seats. Clinton looked up at him, taking in the worn jeans, the faded flannel shirt, the calluses on his hands. "This doesn't concern you, friend. Why don't you go back to your coffee and mind your own business?" "See? That's where you're wrong," William replied, his eyes never leaving Clinton's hand on Seraphina's wrist. "When a man puts his hands on a woman who doesn't want it, it becomes everyone's business. Now, I'm going to ask you once, politely, to let her go." The diner had gone completely silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. Seraphina looked at William, surprise, mixing with gratitude in her expression. No one had stood up for her like this in years. In her world, people didn't intervene. They calculated advantages and disadvantages, measured profit and loss. But they didn't simply step forward because it was the right thing to do. Clinton's face flushed red. "Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy and sell you 100 times over. I could make one phone call, and you'd never work in this city again. I know exactly what you are," William said. And now there was an edge to his voice, sharp as a Kabar knife. "You're a man who thinks money makes him untouchable. But right now, in this moment, your money doesn't mean anything. You're going to let go of her wrist, you're going to apologize, and then you're going to leave. Or we're going to have a different kind of conversation." Clinton made 2 mistakes then. The first was assuming that a man who worked 3 jobs and wore old clothes was weak. The second was nodding to his associates to handle the situation. The younger one started to stand, reaching for William's shoulder. The movement that followed was so quick and efficient that most of the people in the diner weren't sure what they'd seen. William pivoted on his left foot, his right hand coming up to trap the associate's reaching arm. A twist, a step, and suddenly the younger man was face down on the table, his arm locked behind him in a control hold that promised significant pain if he struggled. The second associate had barely started to move when William's free hand pointed at him. A simple gesture that somehow carried enough weight to freeze him in place. "Nobody needs to get hurt here," William said, his voice never rising above conversational level. "Your friend is fine. His shoulder might be sore tomorrow, but nothing's damaged. Yet." He looked back at Clinton. "Let her go. Now." Clinton released Seraphina's wrist, his face a mixture of rage and humiliation. She stepped back, rubbing the red marks on her skin. William held the control hold for another second, then released the associate, who stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Clinton snarled, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling the police. Assault and battery. You're going to jail. And I'm going to make sure you stay there." William returned to his table, picked up his coffee cup, and took a sip. "You do what you need to do, but everyone here saw you grab her first. That's assault. What I did was intervene in defense of another person. Any cop worth his badge knows the difference." The police arrived 12 minutes later. Henry Brooks, a 20-year veteran of the force, took statements from everyone present. The security camera footage was frustratingly inconclusive, the neon lights creating a glare that obscured the crucial first moments of the confrontation. But Seraphina's statement was clear, and 2 other customers reluctantly confirmed that Clinton had grabbed her first. "Looks like self-defense to me," Lieutenant Brooks said, closing his notebook. He knew William by reputation, had heard about the Marine who worked multiple jobs to support his daughter, never caused trouble, always paid his bills on time. "But Mr. Moore here is insisting on pressing charges, so I need you to come down to the station, Mr. Carter." William nodded. "I need to make a call first. My daughter's with a neighbor, and I've got a shift starting in an hour." "Daddy?" Bridget's sleepy voice came through the phone. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. I might be a little late getting home. Mrs. Chen will make you breakfast, okay? Be good for her. Did you help someone, Daddy? Like you used to do when you were a Marine?" William closed his eyes. "Something like that, baby. Get some sleep." At the station, Clinton was already there with a lawyer. An oily man in an expensive suit who kept talking about lawsuits and damages and teaching certain people their place. But help came from an unexpected source. Andrea Collins, 34 years old, with the kind of fierce intelligence that had gotten her through law school on scholarships while raising 2 kids alone, walked into the station at 2:30 in the morning. "I'm Mr. Carter's attorney," she announced. One of the customers at the diner had called her, knowing she did pro bono work for veterans. "I'd like a moment with my client." The next morning, William woke to find his phone buzzing with notifications. Someone had posted a video online, carefully edited to show only the moment when William had restrained Clinton's associate. The caption read, "Violent veteran attacks customer at local diner." The video had been shared hundreds of times, picked up by local news aggregators. By noon, William had lost his security job, the company citing potential liability issues. Seraphina found out about the video from Vivian Hale, her father's head of public relations. Vivian, 31 and sharp as a surgical scalpel, had built her career on crisis management. She sat across from Seraphina in a Dawson Tech conference room, tablet in hand, expression carefully neutral. "This is becoming a problem," Vivian said. "The man who intervened last night is being portrayed as unstable. Clinton Moore has connections in media, and he's using them. The narrative is spinning out of control. Then we need to correct the narrative," Seraphina said. "That man protected me. He stood up when everyone else looked away. That man," Vivian replied, pulling up a file on her tablet, "is William Carter. Former Marine, honorable discharge after an injury in Afghanistan. Single father, wife, died of cancer 4 years ago. He's been receiving treatment for PTSD, which Moore's people are already spinning as evidence of mental instability." Seraphina felt anger rise in her chest, hot and unfamiliar. In her world, battles were fought with proxies and press releases. But this felt personal. He saved me from being assaulted, and now they're destroying his life? "Welcome to the real world," Vivian said, not unkindly. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The door to the conference room opened, and Archibald Dawson entered. At 62, he moved with the confidence of a man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with enough money or influence. He looked at his daughter with a mixture of concern and frustration. "Enough," he said simply. "This experiment of yours has gone too far. You're coming home. Finn will handle your security from now on." Finn Turner, 33, stood in the doorway behind Archibald. Former Special Forces, now private security, he had the kind of presence that made people step aside without really knowing why. But Seraphina stood her ground. "No," she said. "I'm not running away, and I'm not letting them destroy William Carter for protecting me." "The man is a nobody," Archibald said, his tone dismissive. 3 jobs, barely making rent. Probably saw an opportunity when he recognized you. He didn't know who I was." Seraphina shot back. "He didn't help me because I'm your daughter. He helped me because it was the right thing to do. When's the last time someone in our world did that?" Over the next few days, William's life continued to unravel. The edited video had gone viral in local circles. Parents at Bridget's school whispered when he picked her up. The property management company that employed him for handyman work suddenly had no available assignments. His delivery route supervisor suggested he take some time off until things cool down. Andrea worked tirelessly, filing motions and gathering evidence. But the legal system moved slowly. Clinton's lawyers filed a civil suit, claiming damages for assault, defamation, and emotional distress. The number they were asking for was more than William would make in 10 years. "They're trying to bury you," Andrea said, sitting across from William in her cluttered office. "Make you settle, sign an NDA. Disappear." "I didn't do anything wrong," William said, his hands folded on the table. They were steady, no shake, no tremor. The PTSD treatment had been working. Had been for 2 years now. "I protected someone who needed help. And that's exactly why they're coming after you so hard," Andrea replied. "You made Clinton Moore look weak in public. Men like him can't let that stand." That evening, William sat with Bridget at their small kitchen table, helping her with homework. She was drawing a picture for art class, a superhero with a cape and a shield. "Is this me?" William asked, pointing to the figure. "It's you protecting the lady at the diner," Bridget said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Chen told me about it. She said you were brave. Sometimes being brave costs a lot, sweetheart," William said carefully. Bridget looked up at him with eyes that were too wise for 7 years old. "But you did it anyway. That's what makes it brave, right?" The knock on the door came at 8 o'clock. William opened it to find Seraphina standing there, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her waitress uniform, holding a casserole dish covered in foil. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. "May I come in?" William stepped aside, and Seraphina entered the small apartment. It was clean, almost military in its organization. A folded flag in a triangle case on the mantel, photos of a younger William in dress blues, a woman who must have been Bridget's mother smiling from a dozen frames. "You didn't have to come here," William said. "Yes, I did." Seraphina set the casserole on the counter. "This is my fault. Clinton Moore is doing this because of who my father is. Because of some business deal. You're collateral damage in a war you didn't even know existed." "I knew exactly what I was doing when I stood up," William replied. "And I'd do it again." They stood there in the small kitchen. Two people from different worlds, connected by a moment of violence and courage. Seraphina looked at the bills stacked neatly on the counter. The schedule of 3 jobs taped to the refrigerator. The bright crayon drawings that covered every other available surface. "I need to tell you something," she said. "My name isn't Sarah. It's Seraphina Dawson. My father is Archibald Dawson. Dawson Tech. I figured it out," William said. "The way you talked, moved. You weren't born to this work. Doesn't matter. You were a woman who needed help. That's all I needed to know." Seraphina felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of something real and honest that had nothing to do with stock prices or board meetings. "I want to help you. Let me pay for a better lawyer. Make this go away." "No." William's response was immediate. "I don't need charity, and I won't be bought off." Clinton Moore was wrong, and everyone in that diner knew it. If we let money decide who's right and wrong, then what kind of world are we leaving for her? He nodded toward Bridget's room. The legal maneuvering intensified over the next week. Clinton's team had deep pockets and media connections. Stories began appearing about William's time in Afghanistan. His PTSD diagnosis spun to suggest instability and violence. They found a photo from a bar fight 6 years ago, before his treatment, before he'd gotten his life together after his wife's death. The context didn't matter. The narrative was being built, brick by brick. But Seraphina and Andrea were building their own case. Andrea tracked down Gwen Parker, 29, who had worked as a bartender at an upscale hotel where Clinton was a regular. She had her own story about Clinton's wandering hands and explicit propositions, complete with text messages he'd sent after she'd rejected him. 2 other women came forward privately, afraid to go public but willing to provide statements. "We have a pattern of behavior," Andrea said, spreading documents across the conference table at her office. "But patterns don't matter if we can't prove what happened that night at the diner. The camera footage is compromised," Seraphina said. "The angle, the lights. It doesn't show Clinton grabbing me clearly." "Then we need something else," Andrea replied. Or someone else. That someone turned out to be Marcus Rodriguez, a truck driver who'd been sitting in the corner booth that night. He'd been keeping his head down, not wanting trouble, but his 12-year-old daughter had seen the news stories. She'd asked him why the man who helped the lady was being called bad names. Marcus couldn't explain to her why he'd stayed silent, so he decided not to stay silent anymore. "I saw the whole thing," Marcus told Andrea and Seraphina in a recorded statement. "That Clinton guy grabbed the waitress hard enough to leave marks. She asked him to stop 3 times. The veteran, he gave Clinton every chance to back down. What he did was textbook defensive intervention. I know because I used to be military police, back before I started driving trucks." Meanwhile, Clinton was escalating. He sent a message through intermediaries. William could make this all go away. $50,000 and a signature on a non-disclosure agreement. Enough money to cover rent for 2 years, to ensure Bridget could stay in her school, maybe even start a college fund. William looked at the offer for exactly 3 seconds before tearing it in half. "Tell Clinton Moore he can take his money and his NDA and shove them where the sun doesn't shine." The response came 12 hours later. Photos appeared on social media, taken with a telephoto lens. William walking Bridget to school. Bridget at dance class. The message was clear. "We know where you are. We know your routines. We're watching." Henry Brooks, the lieutenant who'd responded to the original call, saw the photos and immediately opened an official investigation into criminal harassment and stalking. "This crosses a line," he told William. "This is witness intimidation." The turning point came from an unexpected source. Finn Turner, Archibald Dawson's security chief, had been conducting his own investigation on his employer's orders. He was supposed to find dirt on William, prove he was an opportunist, or worse. Instead, he found a decorated Marine who'd lost 2 men in an ambush he still blamed himself for, who'd held his wife's hand through 18 months of chemotherapy, who'd never missed a parent-teacher conference despite working 3 jobs. Finn sat across from Archibald in the Billionaire's home office, a room that cost more to furnish than William Carter would make in a lifetime. "Your daughter is right about him," Finn said simply. "He's one of the good ones. Everyone has a price," Archibald replied, not looking up from his screens showing real-time market data. "Not everyone," Finn said. Clinton Moore offered him $50,000 to go away. Carter tore up the check. "Moore's people have been photographing his daughter, trying to intimidate him. He hasn't budged. When's the last time you met someone who couldn't be bought?" Archibald finally looked up. In his world, everything was a transaction. Every relationship had a value proposition. But here was a man who'd risked everything for his daughter, expecting nothing in return. "What do you recommend?" Archibald asked. "Help him," Finn said. "Not with money, with the truth." The annual Dawson Tech product launch was the biggest tech event on the West Coast. 800 journalists, investors, and industry leaders gathered in the conference center to see the unveiling of Cloud Atlas, the new distributed computing platform that would revolutionize data storage. Clinton Moore was there, of course, standing near the front with other major investors, confident that his little problem with William Carter would soon be resolved. Archibald Dawson took the stage to thunderous applause. But instead of launching into his prepared remarks about Cloud Atlas, he did something unprecedented. "Before we talk about the future of technology," he said, "I want to talk about the present of humanity." The room grew quiet, confused. 2 weeks ago, my daughter was assaulted in a diner. A man grabbed her, hurt her, tried to use his power and wealth to intimidate her. And everyone looked away. Everyone except one man. On the screens behind him, the security footage from the diner appeared. But this wasn't the degraded, glare-obscured footage that had been circulating. This was the original digital file, pulled directly from the security system before it had been compressed and transmitted. The enhancement team at Dawson Tech had cleaned it up, frame by frame. It clearly showed Clinton grabbing Seraphina, her face contorting in pain, other customers turning away. And then William standing up, approaching calmly, trying to de-escalate. "The man you see defending my daughter is William Carter," Archibald continued. "A Marine veteran, a single father, a man who works 3 jobs to support his child. He's been subjected to a campaign of harassment, and intimidation for doing what every person in that diner should have done: standing up for someone who needed help. Clinton's face had gone pale. He started moving toward the exit, but found Henry Brooks and 2 other officers waiting for him. "Clinton Moore," Lieutenant Brooks said, loud enough for the nearby journalist to hear. "You're under arrest for assault, criminal harassment, witness intimidation, and stalking." The flash of cameras was blinding as Clinton was handcuffed and led away. But Archibald wasn't finished. "I've learned something important from this situation. My daughter chose to work in that diner because she wanted to understand how real people live, what they struggle with, what they need. She was right to do so, because how can we build technology for everyone if we don't understand everyone?" Seraphina took the stage then, not as the billionaire's daughter playing at being working class, but as a woman who'd found her voice through adversity. "William Carter didn't save me because I was Archibald Dawson's daughter," she said. "He didn't know who I was. He saved me because I was a human being who needed help. That's the kind of integrity we should all aspire to. That's why I'm announcing the launch of the Safe Workplace Initiative, a comprehensive program to prevent harassment and protect workers at all levels, funded by Dawson Tech, but available to any company that wants to participate." The announcement made headlines, but not the ones Clinton had planned. Within days, 6 more women came forward with stories about his behavior. His investment firm began hemorrhaging clients. Federal investigators started looking into some of his shadier deals. The man who'd thought money made him untouchable discovered that even wealth had limits when the truth came to light. William watched the news coverage from his apartment. Bridget curled up beside him on the couch. Andrea had called to tell him that Clinton's civil suit had been dropped, and there was talk of a settlement for the harassment and defamation William had endured. "You're going to be okay," Andrea said. "Better than okay. There are 3 job offers already from companies that want to hire a man with your integrity." But William wasn't thinking about job offers. He was thinking about Seraphina's words on that stage, about integrity and doing the right thing when no one was watching. He thought about the fear in her eyes that night at the diner, and how it had transformed into strength when she stood before those cameras. 3 days later, there was another knock at his door. This time, it was Archibald Dawson himself, accompanied by Finn. The billionaire looked out of place in the narrow hallway of the apartment building, but he stood there without any sign of discomfort. "Mr. Carter," Archibald said, "I owe you an apology. I assumed you were trying to take advantage of my daughter. I was wrong." William stepped aside to let them in. Bridget peeked out from her room, eyes wide at the visitors. "You don't owe me anything," William said. "I did what anyone should have done." "That's exactly the point," Archibald replied. "Anyone should have, but only you did. I've been thinking about what my daughter said, about understanding how real people live. I built my empire on the idea that technology could improve lives, but somewhere along the way, I lost touch with the lives I was supposedly improving." He pulled out an envelope, and William immediately shook his head. "I don't want your money. It's not money," Archibald said. "It's a job offer, a real one. Head of security for our new community initiatives program. The same program my daughter will be running. It pays $90,000 a year, full benefits, flexible hours so you can be there for your daughter. You'd be protecting people who need it, training others to stand up like you did." William looked at the offer, then at Bridget, who was now standing in the doorway of her room, holding the drawing she'd made of him as a superhero. "Can I think about it?" William asked. "Of course," Archibald said. He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Mr. Carter, I'd be proud to have a man like you protecting my daughter. Not as her bodyguard, but as her colleague, maybe even as her friend." After they left, William sat at the kitchen table, staring at the job offer. Bridget climbed into his lap. "Are you going to take it, Daddy?" she asked. "What do you think I should do?" William replied. "I think you should do what makes you happy," Bridget said. "And I think helping people makes you happy." 2 weeks later, William Carter walked into the Dawson Tech building for his first day of work. He wore the same flannel shirt he'd worn at the diner, because clothes didn't make the man. Actions did. Seraphina was waiting for him in the lobby, not as the billionaire's daughter, but as his colleague and partner in building something meaningful. "Ready to change the world?" she asked with a smile. "I just want to make it a little safer," William replied. One person at a time. They walked together toward the elevator, past the photos of technological achievements and stock market victories. But the newest addition to the wall was different. It was a simple plaque with a quote, "Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching." Below it was a photo from the diner that night, grainy and imperfect, showing a man standing up while others sat down. It wasn't about the violence that followed or the scandal that erupted. It was about that moment of choice, when William Carter decided that a stranger's safety was worth more than his own comfort. The Safe Workplace Initiative launched a month later with Seraphina as director and William as head of security and training. Andrea Collins joined as legal counsel, her fire for justice given a platform and resources she'd never dreamed of. Even Vivian Hale, the PR executive who'd initially wanted to bury the story, became a fierce advocate for the program, using her media connections to spread awareness. The program's first training session was held at the Moonlight Diner, the owner having enthusiastically agreed to host. William stood before a group of managers, workers, and security personnel from various companies, teaching them not just physical intervention techniques, but the moral courage to act when witnessing injustice. "The hardest part isn't the physical confrontation," he told them. "It's overcoming the voice in your head that says it's not your problem, that you should mind your own business. But when someone is being hurt and you have the power to stop it, it is your business. It's everyone's business." In the audience, Gwen Parker sat with the other women who'd come forward about Clinton Moore. They were no longer victims but advocates, sharing their stories to help others recognize and respond to harassment. The ripple effects spread outward, each training session creating more people willing to stand up, to speak out, to protect those who needed protection. Clinton Moore's trial became a landmark case, not just for the assault on Seraphina, but for the pattern of harassment and the attempt to destroy William's life through intimidation and manipulation. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay substantial damages to his victims. More importantly, his case became a cautionary tale about the limits of wealth and influence when confronted with truth and courage. 6 months after that night at the diner, William and Seraphina stood in a park, watching Bridget learn to ride her bike without training wheels. It had become their Sunday tradition, these simple moments that had nothing to do with Dawson Tech or security initiatives or changing the world. They were just 3 people who'd found each other through an act of violence that became a catalyst for something better. "You know what Bridget asked me yesterday?" Seraphina said, holding a box of homemade cookies she'd brought for their picnic. She asked if standing up for people runs in families. William smiled, his eyes never leaving his daughter as she wobbled, but stayed upright on the bike. "What did you tell her?" "I told her it does now," Seraphina replied, taking his hand. As the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Bridget successfully completed her first solo lap around the park path. She threw her arms up in triumph, and both William and Seraphina cheered. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, just a child learning to ride a bike, but it was built on the same foundation as everything else they were building together: trust, courage, and the belief that falling down was just part of learning to stand up. The Moonlight Diner still serves terrible coffee at all hours of the night. The neon sign still flickers, casting blue shadows on the chrome tables. But now there's something new on the wall. A small sign by the register that reads, "This establishment does not tolerate harassment of any kind. We stand up for each other here." And in a small apartment across town, a Marine veteran no longer needs 3 jobs to make ends meet. He works one job that matters, teaching others what he's always known: that dignity isn't measured in dollars, that courage isn't the absence of fear but action in spite of it, and that sometimes standing up for a stranger in a diner can change more lives than anyone could imagine. William Carter never sought to be a hero. He just refused to be a bystander. And in a world full of people looking away, that made all the difference.